Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So since I've been traveling way too much, I decided to talk about a sugya. I think it's very relevant to many of us on many different times of the year, which is when do we say Birkat HaGomel, especially now it's also cold season. I mean, my house is one big infirmary. Literally all my kids are sick. It goes one step at a time. So I'm sure you know that my wife was thrilled that I was in America during that time. So the question is, at what point, the Gemara in front of you, in Gemara Brachos Daf Nun Daled, Rabbi Yehuda Marav says there are 4 people that have to give Hodah, which we say is Yor de Ayam, Hoche Midbaros, Misha Yechole V'nitra Peg, Misha Yechovish B'veit Asurim V'yatza. So we're not going to go through all the cases. It's from the Tilim Kuf Zayin, which might be familiar to you. It's the Tilim we say in Yom Ha'atzmaut. Which is not by chance that our rabbis chose to take the Tehillim because we believe that the Medinat Yisrael is one big miracle. But the question is how literally to take these 4 cases. What is the Hagdara of these 4 cases of being sick and being healed, going down to the sea? If I'm on a boat, for example, I'll say quickly the first 2 cases first. And we're going to hint at all these cases, but Yor de Hayam, what's the exact case of Yor de Hayam? Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach had a question, Zechron Tzaddik Livracha. Let's say I'm taking, a lot of us are madrichim and madrichot, so we go whitewater rafting on the Jordan River. It's nice fun, I did it, I don't know if you guys did it, hour and a half, 2 hours. Did you say Birkat HaGomel with your campers after? No, you freak show, right? No, you didn't, right? Unless you had a very frum machach bus. I don't know. Maybe you had Ezra as the madrich, right? But what's going on? Why not? Yor de Hayam, right? Maybe because during that time the rapids weren't so, it was weak rapids. You had to pay, it depends the rate that you paid. But that's the question. Yor de Hayam. What's the definition of a Yor de Hayam? Number 2, Holchei Midbaros. So this I actually went over to Reb Nevinsal a couple days ago. I was discussing again because here the question is what we're going to ask is what obligates us to say Birkat HaGomel? What's the obligation? So I'm walking again. I led many camps and I walked in Midbar Yehuda. Did I ever say Birkat HaGomel after leading my camp in Midbar? I actually didn't. The question is why I didn't. Because Reb Nevinsal says, yeah, of course you should have said Birkat HaGomel after going through Midbar Yehuda, right? Holech Midbar. I think the answer why I didn't is the same thing what Rav Shlomo Zalman said about the Yor de Hayam, which is that because it's like if something happened, right? We've all had those stories as madrichim and madrichot where all of a sudden we don't know where the camper is or something like that, and you freak out and your cell phone just about dead and you didn't have BBM at that point and everything was going on, but you had to show that you were a madrich because you got a lot of leadership training, whichever organization you were in, you had to show that you were confident. But the point is, you had a certain ability to save you right away. Meaning it's ki'ilu, it's right next to Yishuv, and it's not a big deal. So same thing, just like when if you were taking a sailing boat or whatever it is on the Kinneret, it's not really a sakana because it's so easy to save from you. And I think that was the same idea when I was Holech Bamidbar. You had this, techie guy, you had this madrich, and you had this. It's not a big deal. No, but the uvda is that Rav Nevinsal has a very good point because lo aleinu, we've had stories over the last couple of summers, definitely of somebody who died in the midbar making a tiyul, even with modern technology, right? Lo aleinu, we've had that. But so the question is what is the mechayev? At what point are we obligated to say it? And I guess tonight, just to be focused, I wanted to focus on the case of when is it considered to be choleh. The first case is Misha Choleh V'nitra Peg. And the second case, which I want to talk about, which is flying on an airplane, which is a pretty interesting case, which we had talked about, which is if I'm flying from Manchester to London, Miss Joseph, right? A half an hour flight instead of driving 3.5 hours. Is that what obligates me to say Birkat HaGomel? Do I say, look, one svara is who said you have to go on an airplane? Right? You could have driven it. I drove it in one day, 3.5 hours to Manchester and 3.5 hours back. I didn't have to get onto an airplane. No, some people would say, what are you talking about? Driving in a car maybe is more dangerous. Right? Statistically, right? Driving in Israel, you have to get your head checked. Right? Like, well, what are you thinking? Right? It's more dangerous than the guy who's tayas and El Al. Tower, lifnei habezman, maybe not. You guys remember tower? Yeah, you guys are still young. Oh, Chesner remembers. One guy remembers. He was on Shlichut last year. He's still, Okay. It's like when I was recruiting, I was talking about in 1993. And I'm like, oh, you weren't born then. And this is how it works. So let's try to figure out what the Hagdara is for both cases. Let's first talk about the first case, about how sick do you have to be? Meaning, if you have a fever, if you get the flu, right? Let's say I get a headache. Is it that extreme? Meaning to say, HaGomel, right? Chayavim l'tovot, shegmalani kol tov. The truth is, there is a machloket about the nusach of the bracha, which we're not going to get into right now. And it's actually some fascinating stuff. Because the Gemara talks about Baruch Gomel Chasidim Tovim, which sounds like the bracha we say in the morning for those people that daven early in the morning. Right? Gomel Chasidim Tovim Lama Yisrael. Some people had a suffix in the Talmidim by Rav Shlomo Zalman, and they said maybe to have that in mind. But not getting into the nusach of the bracha, which is interesting. Gomel Chayavim. So the question is, if like you're an 11-year-old and you fly, a 10-year-old and fly, so you're not chayav in onshim, maybe you don't have to say Birkat HaGomel. These are all side topics. There's a lot there. Woman who gives birth. A lot of issues that come up. Why do you need 10? We're not going to get into that tonight either. Do you need 10, 12? Is it part of the din? Really a fascinating sugya, but I want to stay focused here. Okay, so how sick do you have to be? So right in front of you, we see a machloket rishonim. Tosfot quotes, after saying that the minhag is to make Birkat HaGomel after you read the Torah, Tosfot says it's not all sicknesses. But he says, Dafka b'chola shenafal l'mitah. Right? Literally it means you were bedridden. Question is again, what does that mean? How long is bedridden? Is that a day? Is it 3? Is it an issue of time? Right? Or is it an issue? Let's say I was bedridden, meaning I had a headache and I needed to sleep it off for 3 hours. Right? But that's what he says. No. If you have a headache or you have a stomach ache, if you just have a headache but you're able to go through, then no. Right? So Tosfos is quoting Rabbeinu Yosef, says that if I just have a headache, which is the same thing, right? We'll see the comparison between taking medicine on Shabbat and this sugya, Siman Shin Chav Chet. Some of the posts can bring this down also. For example, you can't take an aspirin on Shabbat. I know this might be a chiddush for some people. I might have mentioned it already. If I just have a headache and I'm able to walk around, so I can't just pop an Advil, right? Because, hey, Oneg Shabbos, you start getting a little information, you start using your thumbs and, watch out. Right? We always start becoming our own posek. Right? No, it's a chash barosho. If it doesn't mean that you're going to be in bed, you definitely can't take medicine on Shabbat. So too over here, Rabbeinu Yosef says, just stop having a headache, and this everybody's going to agree to. If you have a headache, even the Sephardim, right? That's what we're going to say. Everybody's going to say you don't have to say Birkat HaGomel. But if you look at the Rambam leaves it as Arba Tzrichim Lodot Cholesh Nitrapeh, and he doesn't go any further. So if you look at the Tur, right? A lot of times that's how you have to, the evolution of halacha. You go from either the Gaonim time, the Braitas, the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Rishonim, down to the Tur, the Beit Yosef, to the Shulchan Aruch, to the modern day poskim, just showing you a little bit the evolution of halacha. It's not just yes or no, tell me the halacha rabbi, but actually hopefully learning it, which is what we're doing here. So if you look at the Tur says, and he brings up a case also of when you're going from city to city. He says, "V'noagim ba'Ashkenaz v'Tzorfat she'im mevarchim ksheholchem me'ir le'ir shelo chayvu el b'holchei midbarot." It's talking about when you're going to midbar kashchichi bechayot raot v'listim. As the Yerushalmi says, "Kol hadrachim b'cheskas sakana" is only l'inyan tfilat haderech. The question is, how much is the tfilat haderech and Birkat HaGomel compared? We'll see that it's not so simple that they're actually compared. Right? Shebechol hadrachim tzarich adam levakesh al atzmo. That is on tfilat haderech. But Birkat HaGomel is b'makom todah itkin. The question is how literally you take it instead of the korban todah. And then he says, because of that, v'chein linyan chole, he quotes the Rabbeinu Yosef that we saw, dafka b'chol shenaf al amito, av'chol shbarosho, b'mei avein tzar chavar, v'chein kasav arrivid, dafka b'makah shel chalal, shesh bo sakana, a makkah of sakana. That's when you have to say Birkat HaGomel. Aval Rambam zalkasa b'chol derech v'chol choli, tzarich lehodot. The Garsinam B'Yerushalmi Kol HaDrachim is B'cheskat Sakanahi. V'chol HaCholim is also B'cheskat Sakana. V'kein Kasev Ba'aruch Dafilu Chash Beina B'Rosho Tzarich Levarich. So it sounds like from the Aruch, definitely the eyes, but it says maybe even a headache, you would have to make it. Again, maybe V'chein Noagim B'Sfarad. Now we will see that even in Sfarad, just a headache, nobody has the minhag to make Birkat HaGomel. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, so basically you'll see now how the Shulchan Aruch, where the Shulchan Aruch came from. B'chol choli tzarich levarich. Afilu eino choli shel sakana v'lo makah shel chalal. Ela kol she'ala l'mita v'yarad. Minei shedome kemi she'elu l'gardom. Perish ma'alot she'osim dinim lashevet keshedanim lidon. Right? So, what does it say? First of all, it definitely does not say if it's chosh barosho, but how the Mishnah Berurah explains it, right? That you have to what? Not just have a headache. The Mishnah Berurah in Chavdalet said if you didn't go to the meat at all, you just have any type of headache, or you have a sore throat, for sure you don't make a bracha, right? And this language comes from the Gemara in Shabbat that says if you just have a headache, you do not. But once you are alal mitah, which means you're really sick, and therefore you went to the mitah, it's mimnei shedome kemo she'alu legardom, that we don't know how it's going to be, right? You're going in front of the court case, you don't know how it's going to be, guilty or innocent. She'ena yodim Mishnah Berurah sifkat al-chavhei eich yatsa dino kemo keim b'choleh kevet shenafal mishkav lahavda. What do they say? They say like the hospital is not for help, not for sick people. Is that what they say? Not for healthy people? What's the expression? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you got it. Now, not for sick people, right? It is for sick people. No, I don't know. You know what I mean? Hospitals are not for, I don't know. The point is, you're not supposed to be there because you get even more sick. So that's the Rashi on it. The Mishnah Berurah says, "Kevin shenafal mishkav einan yodim sofo shekama pa'amim lo aleinu." Even though the tchila was not b'sakana, but unfortunately, sickness could, gain intensity and come lidei sakana. So therefore, this is the first opinion. The first opinion clearly says, not like the Aruch that had said that even if you're just chash be'inav or barosho, tzarich levarech. So the Shulchan Aruch says, anytime you get to the mitah. Now, according to this case, seemingly it just seems to be nafal mitah, which means I had a really, let's say I have a really serious headache and I slept for 5 hours. Question is, would that be, right? That we'll see. But then he says, ve'ein hefresh, continues the Shulchan Aruch, I'm back to page 1. Ve'ein sheyesh lo michush kavua uba mizman lezman, where you have like constant migraines. Uvein she'eno kavua. Haga, right, and that's the Rashba, right? It doesn't matter if it's constant or not, right? The Rashba, where the Beit Yosef already quoted the Rashba, which is even more so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing even more of chesed from Shamayim, that he's enabling you to be healthy. But then the Ramah quotes, like we saw from Tosfos, and the Torah quoted the Ravid from Rabbeinu Yosef, what we saw, Yesh omrim deinu mevarich rak al choli sheish po sakana. Kagol makal shel chalal, says the Mishnah Berurah on page number 2. Uadin, says the Mishnah Berurah, bechola, what does it mean? Not only in a serious makah, also a chole shebemita yote megimel yamin. Right? So the implication of the Taz, right? The Taz says not only in a makah shel chalal, but also it's a 3-day period, right? The implication is the first opinion. It didn't have to be 3 days. The implication is, right? He's explaining the opinion of Rabbeinu Yosef, of the Balei Ashkenaz, that the Hagdara of really being b'sakana is you're in bed for 3 days, right? The implication, like I said before, it could be that you're in bed, you're really sick and you're in bed for a day, right? The first opinion would say you're in this, fever, right? That's what we're going to get to over here in the Bir Halacha. And he says, what happens with fever, right? So he says it could be depending on this, right? I'm on the last source on page number 2. If you just had a fever and you were in bed for a couple of hours, you would say Birkat HaGomel according to, right? Pretty crazy. How many of you? Okay. Right? Which we would call the flu, right? Anybody ever, right? In theory, if you have the flu for 3 days and you were like mamish in bed, according to Ashkenazim, you'd have to say Hagomel. Okay? Whatever, look what he says. The ataz kosav adas, which we had just seen before, that it's also true for 3 days. The etiku achronim.